Donald Trump's tariff policy is making it more expensive. Donald Trump's war in Iran is making gas more expensive. Donald Trump's big ugly bill is going to devastate rural health care and make you drive hours to see a doctor. Now, Donald Trump is making your life a lot more difficult. Democrats will make it better.
I'm told Governor Beshear is on the line with us.
I'm on.
Hey, great to have you with us. Governor Andy Beshear, the governor and host of the Andy Beshear podcast right here on Sirius XM Podcast Network. Also author of the new book available for pre-order, Go and Do Likewise, How We Heal a Broken Country. And of course, the governor of Kentucky. Governor, welcome to the program. So glad to have you with us. I'm curious, just right off the bat, what looking at this mind-boggling political landscape that we have right now, we're in the middle of a war, we've got these wild tariffs, we've got a crazy man in the White House. What do you see as the nation's top priorities? And what are your priorities as a Democratic governor in a, 30-plus Trump red state?
Well, what I see are two major challenges to this country that I think we've got to address for our people. One is the division that we see out there, this president making everything about us versus them, claiming that there is an enemy from within, telling you that you're not supposed to love, but instead perhaps even hate your neighbor. But the second, and the one where we ought to be really driving policy, is the concern by so many people that the American dream is slipping away. That even if they work hard and play by the rules, they can't afford the things they need. The idea that maybe they can pay the grocery bill at the end of the month, but they can't take their kids on the same vacation their parents took them on. They can't afford a house as a young couple, even close to the age of their parents. They're worried about going to the doctor because they're not going to be able to afford that next prescription that comes. And so the needs of the American people ought to be front and center. How do we make life just a little bit better and a little bit easier? And for me, that's how I've governed. How I'm still governor in a Trump plus 31 state is really three parts. First, I stand up for all my convictions. I'm always going to fight against any form of discrimination, but I spend 80% of my time on things that matter to 100% of the people of Kentucky, and I think the American people. So that's your job and whether you can afford the things you need. It's that next doctor's appointment for yourself, your parents, or your kids. It's the roads and bridges you drive each day, the school you drop your kids off at, and whether you feel safe in your community. Second thing I try to do is just talk like a normal human being. We can't talk at people or down to them. We just have to talk to people. We've got to use language that actually has emotion. It's that idea that we lose people from addiction and not substance use disorder. If we want everybody to have enough to eat, we can't be using terms like food insecure. It means people will go hungry. And the last thing I try to do, which is what my book is all about, is share my why. For me, it's my faith, that idea of the golden rule says we love our neighbor as ourselves, and the parable of the Good Samaritan that says that everyone's our neighbor. That's how I try to live. That's how I try to govern. And I tell you, in that book, I not only talk about how it's helped me govern, but I contrast this very cruel Trump administration and how they sell Bibles, but they don't live by them.
Yeah, sadly. To some of the specifics here, policy-wise, you mentioned affordability. When my dad bought the house that I grew up in, he bought it back in the 1950s, the average cost of a house was about 3 times the average paycheck or the average annual salary. Now it's over 10 times. In part, this is because back then, a third of the country was unionized, and the minimum wage was actually an amount of money that a single person, anyway, could actually live on. I mean, I put myself through college to the extent that I did, working a minimum wage job back in the 60s. You could do that. Are you proposing, with regard to unionization and the minimum wage, any specific policies, for example?
Well, I am and will always be pro-union. In Kentucky, the last governor got terrible anti-union legislation passed. He passed right to work for less. He repealed the prevailing wage, yet we have created good union jobs all across Kentucky these last 6 years. Our average incentivized wage for a new job last year reached $30 an hour. And so while I want to bring down costs, yes, bringing up wages helps our families to afford what they need. When you look at home ownership, I think it's not only a wage and a price issue, it's a supply issue. And so first, we need an aspirational investment in new and affordable housing all across the United States. We've got great programs that exist out there. My Affordable Housing Trust Fund in Kentucky leverages 9 private dollars for every 1 public dollar that's invested. So I've got about a $3.75 billion rainy day fund. If I can get my General Assembly to put $125 million extra in that Affordable Housing Trust Fund, we'll build $1 billion of new housing over the next couple years alone. Then I think we do have to admit that we've had some overregulation in the housing market that has slowed down projects that need to happen. And then we've got to push back on some of the NIMBYism that's existed out there. The average age of new home ownership is now 40 years old in the United States. I was 28 when my wife and I bought our first house. It's something that we have to address, and we should be able to do it practically and pragmatically.
Yeah, I was 27 when we bought our first house. I mean, there's something that you
way ahead of me.
Yeah, something that you could do back in the day. Politico magazine has a piece called "Here's Andy Beshear's Case for President." Are you public? Are you out that you're running for president in 2028?
I haven't made any final decision on that. I'm spending this year trying to be the best governor of Kentucky I can be, but I'm also head of the Democratic Governors Association. So this year the midterms are so important. We've got to flip the House and make a run at the Senate because Congress is not doing its job. It's not following the Constitution and being a separate branch of government and a necessary check on this president and his unlawful actions. But the other thing we've got to do is we've got to win a lot of governor's races. There are 36 governor's races across the country this year. And remember, when Democrats win those races, we do what Republicans can't. We govern well. But if you're looking at 2028, remember, we right now we're fighting in 5 states with 0 margin of error. And by 32, the demographics are going to make it even harder. So if you're focused on 2028, it's not just flipping the House seat in Des Moines, it's flipping the governor's mansion in Iowa that opens up that map and gives Democrats a better shot at the presidency.
There you go, and I think you're a great example of that. You mentioned that your faith informs your governing. Can you speak to that?
At first, I love that you picked up on go and do likewise. So the parable of the Good Samaritan is so important. Jesus takes 2 people that look different, think different, pray different. We're taught to hate each other, yet they are the 2 people he uses to teach us about caring for one another. You know, the person that's in the side of the ditch, bleeding, needing help, a whole bunch of people that look like him, pray like him, and vote like him walk right past him and ignore him. But that other individual picks him up, carries him to safety, and by the way, pays for his health care moving forward. But it's not just a story, it's an instruction. Jesus looks at the audience and says, now go and do likewise. We are called in my faith to help each other, to not judge, to accept, and ultimately to try to build a better world for everyone. And one of the reasons I wrote the book is a lot of people are trying to add comma unless to teachings of Jesus that have no asterisks and no exceptions. You know, it's judge not lest ye be judged, not judge not, comma, unless. It's love your neighbor as yourself, not love your neighbor, comma, unless. It's accept one another as Christ has accepted you, not accept one another, comma, unless. Jesus served those that were judged the most in his day, yet his name is used by some to judge people. And so when I look at legislation, when it's mean, when it's discriminatory, I believe that violates the lessons of my faith. If it's going to take food out of the mouths of children, I think about the miracle, the fishes and the loaves, and the first 4 books of the gospel. It means it's pretty darn important. And in a country that grows enough food for everyone, everyone should have enough.
Yeah, it always strikes me that there's only one place in the Bible where the disciples actually sat down and said, how do we get to be with you in heaven? In Matthew 25, he says, you know, feed the hungry, visit those in prison, welcome the stranger, clothe the homeless, basically, and the entire Republican agenda seems a violation of the very specific instructions that we were given. I don't understand how these folks can call themselves Christians. We have about 30 seconds. Your thoughts on that?
I believe that the Christian faith is all about empathy, is all about being able to feel for someone even if you're not in their position, and trying to do things that lift everyone up and kick no one while they're down. That idea that a good job, being able to see a doctor in your own community, safe roads and bridges, good public education, and being safe in your community. There's nothing Democrat or Republican about those. They help everyone. And those are areas that maybe our faith can create a common language to hopefully not make them bipartisan, but nonpartisan, so that we can get results for our people.
You know, we've got a big election coming up in a few months, a much bigger one in 2 years and change. This slicing and dicing of the Democratic Party into conservatives, moderates, progressives, how they're characterized in the media, how you view that spectrum, how it breaks out on issues and on messaging.
I think it's overly simplistic, and the media likes to press it upon us. You know, every single voter out there is a little different than another voter. They've had different experiences and different backgrounds. I consider myself pragmatic. My job is to make life better for the people of my state and to figure out how to get it done, and then to act with as much urgency as possible. When we look, though, about candidates that are winning, and people like to say, oh, this means the progressive or this means the other, I actually believe just about every candidate that's winning, including going back to Donald Trump, shares one thing in common. They convince the last group of voters that they are more focused on their everyday life and their everyday needs. You saw Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill talking more about it than their opponents and winning by big margins. You saw Zohar Mamdani talking about it more than his opponent and winning. And if you go back to the Trump-Harris at the end of that race, you know, the Harris campaign had a bunch of different messages out there to different parts of the electorate. The Trump campaign just had a couple. One of the main ones was that we will bring prices down. So I don't think it has to be all that complicated right now. The Democratic Party can be and should be the party that's going to make life easier for our families. Donald Trump's tariff policy is making it more expensive. Donald Trump's war in Iran is making gas more expensive. Donald Trump's big ugly bill is going to devastate rural health care and make you drive hours to see a doctor. Now, Donald Trump is making your life a lot more difficult. Democrats will make it better.
One of the big challenges that I believe any politician is facing right now in America, particularly Democrats, given that billionaires are funding Republicans 5-1, according to the last numbers I saw from the New York Times, is Citizens United, is this idea that corporations are persons and entitled to First Amendment right of free speech, and that free speech is the same thing as money. How would you deal with that? How do you think the nation can deal with that?
Oh, I think that Citizens United needs to be overturned, and the only way to do it is a constitutional amendment. But if we're doing that, how about we throw in nonpartisan drawing of districts, so we never have to go through what we're seeing right now, and people will choose their elected officials instead of the other way around. If we're going to do that, I'd also suggest we throw in term limits. And I get that I'm in an executive branch. I'm already term limited. But the idea that that could help create an open dialogue, could help our system of governance, an idea that maybe if you put them all together, bring all those constituencies together, we could actually do one big thing that would really work to fix the things that are wrong with our federal government.
Does it concern you that the studies on state-level term limits suggest that what it does is it amplifies the power of the lobbyists because they become the permanent infrastructure within the state?
Well, I see it a little differently. When folks can continue to run and run and run and run, I think that those lobbyists can potentially have more influence because they've got to be up for and win another election. Whereas you can get sometimes the grace of being in your last term, not being able to stand for election afterwards, that hopefully would help you buck some of those lobbyists and maybe work across the aisle just a little bit more.
Should we have term limits for the Supreme Court?
I think we ought to have term limits across government, yes.
Interesting. In the final minute that we have here, your thoughts on, the coming, we've got March 28th, no Kings coming up. There's a lot of activity going on. What's your advice to Americans right now, how we should respond to this?
Well, I think Americans need to raise their voice. With the iPhone or the smartphone, you now have an ability to speak to the world at any time, to make your voice heard. If you're in the grocery store and you see prices rising, look into that phone and tell your story. If you're at the gas pump and it's so much harder right now because of what Donald Trump is doing, tell your story. If you're going to get out on the streets and express yourself, do it peacefully, but show this country that you're not going to take the type of unlawful behavior we're seeing from this president, and get out there and show a little bit of compassion to your fellow human being.
Yeah, we've got a big lift here with this fellow in the White House right now. Governor Andy Beshear, his new book, which you can pre-order, is called Go and Do Likewise, How We Heal a Broken Country. governor.ky.gov is his website. And Gov Andy Beshear is his Blue Sky handle. Governor, thanks so much for dropping by. Great having you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Great talking with you. And nice meeting you. This episode is brought to you by Native Path grass-fed collagen for better bones, joints, skin, hair, and nails. Here's something that genuinely surprised me. Calcium supplements, the ones millions of people take for bone health, may not be doing much at all because bones are 90% collagen, not calcium. Without the collagen scaffolding to attach itself to, calcium has nowhere to go. And that's where today's sponsor comes in. After 30, our bodies produce 1 to 2% less collagen every single year. That's the protein that keeps our bones dense, our joints cushioned, and our skin firm. By 60, most people have lost half their collagen. And it's nearly impossible to get it back through diet alone because it lives in the parts of the animal that we don't eat, the bones, the cartilage, the tendons. Native Path grass-fed collagen is a clean, grass-fed type 1 and 3 collagen that dissolves completely in coffee or water. No taste, no clumping. Thousands of customers report less joint pain, stronger nails, younger-looking skin, better sleep, and even improved bone density scans. To try it risk-free with a 365-day money-back guarantee, head over to getnativepath.com/Hartmann. That's getnativepath.com/Hartmann with 2 N's at the end. Getnativepath.com/Hartmann.